Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to It's Spoilerin Time. I am Tom Merritt. Brian Brushwood is alongside. We are your hosts.
Yeah.
And today we are going to spoil Cosmos and the Age of the Earth. Spoiler, it's really old. And then we're going to talk about The Shield, which I have continued to book club-like watch. I'm going to talk about Shield episode 8, and we'll finish with Game of Thrones.
So let's jump in with Cosmos. Now, in general, we both agreed, on a really good run of like best episodes, like last 2 weeks. In fact, I didn't mention when we were talking about what we're watching, I rewatched a couple of those episodes with the kids, and I already liked those previous 2 episodes that we had talked about before, but seeing them through my kids' eyes was awesome, man. To see that reflected brain explosion, about understanding, the time machine quality of seeing back into the past and so on. Having said all of that, this episode I found kind of laborious. It had all the elements that I should love. It had a genuine mystery. It had an actual story, a narrative, had a character with a story that I hadn't heard before. But I was so frustrated with the trappings of broadcast primetime television. The fact that they set up a tease to go into a commercial break, and that they have to recap when they come back from commercials. Now, keep in mind, I watched it on Hulu, which means I also had to sit through commercials the entire time. But for the first time, I was just like, oh, God, I get it. Hurry up. Tell us what the big reveal is. I found it tedious in a way that made me uncomfortable. What did you think?
I found this episode to be a little Dickens.
Go on.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
All right.
I started the episode thinking, hey, this is another hit. This is going to be right up there as one of my favorites, because he was really cooking at the beginning when he was talking about the age of the Earth and showing, the mock-ups of what the Earth would have looked like back then and star materials. And when they talked about the backstory of our scientists, they didn't do a lot of, cheesy voiceovers or anything. We just saw him doing his thing. It was a little weird when he was looking around seeing the spots everywhere, but I was like, okay, that's going to resolve itself. We're going to find out what that means later on. So they're not overdoing it. And then they started using the cartoons to tell his story more. And it was the part where he sits down with his boss, and his boss is like, you're going to determine the age of the universe. I was like, this is not how this happened.
Yeah.
This is the worst dialogue that I have seen written on television this week.
Yes.
And I am totally been taken out of my awe and wonder.
I agree. It was clumsy. It's like it played a game that made no sense. It's like you could have, you could have actually hired. It seemed like they were trying to keep it authentic, and in doing so made it ridiculous. Like the speech patterns for the folks when they're doing the testimonies, testifying before Congress, they had a lot of stammering and restarting, and it sounded that very, kind of East Coast 1960s kind of way of talking.
Like kind of Jersey, kind of Massachusetts. Not sure where your accent's supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. But in doing so, it's like, why are you doing this so it doesn't feel like you're fictionalizing it? Because you're clearly fictionalizing it. And then they would follow that up, like this weird token attempt to be realistic, and then do like a show I don't know, G-men in silhouette in a back alley menacingly creeping up on him like it's a melodrama or something.
And the worst outcome of them overselling that part of the story, which is I feel like what they did, is when they're like, you do that and we'll pull your funding. And it turns out, so they pulled his funding, but he was able to continue doing his research. I'm like, wait, there's no consequences. He didn't lose his family. He didn't get go on the run. Like, you way overbuilt up the problem, because I thought at least and then he had to go to trial. No, nothing. He went in front of the Senate and was like, that guy's wrong. And they're like, well, I don't know. He says he's right. I mean, there really wasn't that much controversy over it. And as we all know, living in the current world, we have reduced lead content in things like paint and gasoline. So he obviously won.
Yeah. It's difficult to try to. It's almost insulting for them to try to build tension that way. Do you think?
No, I do. I think it could have been handled in a way that still had the tension, still made the point of when corporate money gets involved in science, it can have a negative effect. because all of the problems with lead and all of the sort of like whitewashing of lead research were totally true. And I loved the idea that they were like, we're not going to do climate change. We're not going to do smoking. We're not going to do any of the ones you might expect us to do. We're going to do lead. Because I bet a bunch of people don't realize that there was pressure to stop that kind of research. But then they overdid it.
Well, and I guess that's the thing, is I applaud the fact that they're finding nooks and crannies in science to tell me stories that I haven't heard before. And again, by the numbers, that means I should have loved this episode, but it was just so clumsily told. And first of all, for all of its benefits and good parts of it, Cosmos is inherently a very wandering, meandering kind of show that sort of shifts from different ideas as if like, and here's something shiny over here, and here's something shiny over here. And in this case, they spent a lot of time setting up you'll know the age of the universe. And then when they got there, he's like, Mom, I know the age of the universe. And then now let's talk about lead. It just felt, like a leaf in the breeze, just kind of dancing whichever way.
4.7 billion years.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, no, if the lead thing hadn't been so overdone, I might be okay with the way they did the Age of the Universe, because it was celebratory. And I like the fact that they told the part of the story where he's like, the first person he went to tell is his mom. That's cute. I like that. But you're right. It kind of got lost in the like, and now we're going to talk about, now we're going to have bad dialogue-driven cartoons about lead poisoning.
Yeah. Man, I hate
Which is exactly as good as it sounds, the way I described it.
Yeah. I did dig, I don't know, some of the animations were a bit, I find myself more than any other show. And first of all, let me say that this is almost certainly colored by my experience of working on, both on Scam School and on hacking the system. I am fascinated to picture the actual man, Neil deGrasse Tyson, in the before and after, and how many retakes, and how interesting that this shot is set up with him in a room, and you'll notice he walks forward and then walks backwards and then walks forward again. Like, knowing that all of that stuff is kind of choreographed and decided and worked out, this dance of which direction he's going to look at stuff. I think about that much, much more on Cosmos than I do any other show that I've noticed before. And I don't know how much of it has to do with it being Cosmos, and I assume most of it is the fact that I just went through that experience recently.
No, I think about things like locations, right? I'm always impressed. And let's spin back to the positive. Some of the best parts of this episode are he's standing in the Roman Forum, and talking about their use of lead. And you're like, holy crap, he's there. He's walking around in the Roman Forum. And then he's in the crater in Arizona when they're talking about, the way that they found all this lead and these meteorites, and he's picking up meteorites off the ground. And it's like, that's where they didn't cheat. That's where they didn't like try to figure out how to get somewhere on the cheap. They like show you the stuff. And I really, really admire that.
And also I did like as well the fact that I learned some genuine hard science that I didn't know before. For example, the exact method by which lead makes us dumb. And I do think that's fascinating, the idea that our entire world was becoming stupider and was swimming in lead. And had things gone just a little bit differently, imagine entire generations, like the idea put forth that that's what caused the fall of the Roman Empire was swimming in lead is kind of horrifying, that kind of thing could be right under our nose.
Yeah, and we could be doing something like that to ourselves right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was sort of an undercurrent that they didn't pound you over the head with, which I appreciate, which is, what are the things that we are told are bad for us and we just ignore and do them anyway that could be our lead? Because remember, the point was the Romans did know that lead was dangerous. They just used it anyway.
They just didn't think it was that dangerous because it was so, yeah.
I honestly, the only disappointment really for me in this episode is they didn't get to the part where they show you how to turn lead into gold.
Do it next week. I'm sure
that was a big oversight, but yeah, maybe they're holding it for a part 2.
Oh, and knowing that like radioactive elements decay into lead, and that lead, once it's lead, is lead forever. Again, there was a lot of parts that I really enjoyed learning new stuff, but again, just that cringeworthy dialogue and storytelling.
That's what I mean, man. Best of times, worst of times. Some of the best stuff they've done was in this episode, but it was inconsistent.
Agreed. Hey, man, let's talk about The Shield.
So Shield episode 8 is what I watched, and this is one where they're really starting to turn my head upside down, right? You're starting to look at the captain as an asshole.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, he's just going to pull his support for the guy that's helping him blow the whistle, and he's not going to stick to his guns, but he's going to get help from the politicians anyway, and he's okay with that. Like, oh, you're actually kind of corrupt right now. And then you've got Vic Mackey saying, I'm going to put the screws to you and get you to pull this thing, but honestly, I want to support you. I want to help you out. And so I'm not going to judge you for your relationship. And in fact, I'm going to try to help you discover who you are a little more, because I don't have a problem with it. I was just using it as a pressure point to get what I wanted. Now that I got what I wanted,
when he's talking to
be yourself.
When he's talking to Julian. Yeah. Yeah.
And then of course you got that amazing family scene with Vic at home being the gentle father with his daughter who's upset about their autistic son and saying, you just got to be the big sister. It just brings tears to your eyes, and it's like, oh my God, like he is so human in this episode in so many ways. And yet they do just enough to remind you, like, this is also the Vic Mackey who just doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Right? When he's out busting the bad guys.
It's episodes like that, to me, that made it such an amazing ride is, and I've said this before, the show begins with, in black and white, as plain as possibly can be communicated, that Vic Mackey is a villain and is damned. And then to do episodes like this, they humanize him. You find yourself, what is perverse is when you find yourself rooting for him as time goes on. You just keep wanting him to get away with it, and you don't know why, because clearly he needs to be caught.
Yeah, well, exactly. But now you're starting to think, well, maybe... I don't know there's the woman who plays character in Warehouse 13. She's one of the detectives, and she has to work with Vic.
Is she white or black?
She's black.
CCH Pounder is the
actress.
Yeah.
CCH Pounder. Thank you. She's the head of the warehouse in Warehouse 13. She is probably the only person I can say is so far totally without any kind of irredeemable characteristic.
Right.
The second would be her partner, the other detective, who's just a little weak when it comes to his crush. Otherwise, he's not really very bad.
Right. Man, I cannot wait for you to experience more of these characters. And as you discover other layers to everyone, it really does a great job of twisting you up. So it's difficult for you to know how to feel about anyone.
Speaking of a great way to twist something up, shall we talk about Game of Thrones?
Oh, is there twists in that show? I hadn't noticed.
There's Breakers of Chains, which is actually the name of this episode. You know what? I want to go right to the most controversial scene of this episode. The quasi, if not full-on, rape scene of Jaime and his sister Cersei in front of their son's tomb.
Yeah, which I believe it did not happen. I'm going to mention that there's a book at this point.
Right.
Get ready.
This is not a book spoiler because you've already seen the episode.
All right.
And George R.R. Martin has addressed this. He's like, this scene in the book is told from Jaime's perspective. And it is
from whose perspective? I couldn't hear.
Jaime. It's told from Jaime's perspective. And don't forget, in the book, Jaime just got home. He wasn't there when Joffrey died, which I had not remembered until I read this article today from George R. R. Martin.
Oh, wow.
And so when Cersei sees him, it's a very confusing welcoming back. And it is somewhat implied that maybe she's uncomfortable with what's going to happen here, but she lets it happen anyway. It's definitely not the situation we have in the TV show where she has been basically pushing Jaime away and is now definitely giving a non-consensual vibe. And that changes the tone of it. Plus, you get to see it from both sides, or from the outside, essentially, on the TV show. In the book, you only get Jaime's interpretation of it.
Right. Well, and I assume Jaime's interpretation was like, well, she resisted, but clearly liked it or whatever. And I feel like, man, this is horrible to say, but I feel like some amount of that was telegraphed in this performance as well, because like you're watching. There are certainly situations where we see in all kinds of dramatic fiction a woman who starts off saying no and then says yes or whatever, and there was a little of that in there where she was resisting but appeared to be kissing back or whatever. Like I did not.
She's almost 95% resisting though.
Yeah,
in the TV show.
Yes. I would agree with that, but I don't know. Like, is there a controversy? Like, people didn't like it or thought it was?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are saying like this seemed out of character for Jamie. We felt like Jamie was being redeemed, and then where this comes out of nowhere. And I don't know that it comes out of nowhere. I think it's supposed to be explainable as he is frustrated with the way Cersei has been treating him up to this point, and he is upset about the loss of Joffrey as well. And that motivates his actions because he isn't a 100% decent guy, and we need to be reminded of that. But wow, did we need to be reminded of it that seriously? Especially, well, I don't know.
I mean, television is a different medium than the books, and keep in mind, he's never. And I'm going to mention that there are things in the books. I don't think he's ever redeemed in the books. It's just that we start seeing things from his perspective, where it's like, yeah, dude, I stabbed, you know, was it Aerys Targaryen or. Who's the
Aerys Targaryen? Yeah.
I stabbed him in the
Mad King. He's the Kingslayer. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he's like, yeah, what else was I supposed to do? And yeah, I was sitting on the throne when Ned Stark showed up because what am I going to do? Just stand there? No, I'm going to sit. There's only one chair in the room. It's the throne. So it's not a case where he's redeemed or starts acting differently. We just see it from different. I guess we do see him start to keep promises in a way.
Well, in the TV show, he has become somebody who you can sort of trust. He has changed because he lost his hand, and he and Brienne actually have a rapport now.
Yeah.
And so you feel like he's on his way back to rehabilitation, and this shows you that he is certainly far from rehabilitated.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's a different format, and I feel like if you want to, in a very short amount of time, remind audiences of who Jaime Lannister is and who the Lannisters are and who you should and should not be rooting for, this was a very effective way, again, within the bounds of the narration that as it existed in the book, to reset your opinion of him as a character and remind
that's probably why they decided. That's why Benioff and Weiss decided to do that. I'm guessing. Let's move on to something I enjoyed much more, which was watching Daenerys outside Marine.
Outside. Oh, Marine. Yeah, sorry, the city.
The slave city.
I was like, there's a Marine.
You've got all of the orgy bot looking guys from Futurama. They're all sitting there eating their grapes, surrounded by their slaves, laughing.
Yes.
As they send out their champion.
I laughed out loud and had a big old stupid grin on my face when they launched the physical proof of of all the slavers' previous chains and had people like, that's all the message, just knowing that was going to spread like wildfire and instantly. It was brilliant negotiation. It was great. It was great to watch. I loved
it. Well, and the setup is, I am not talking to your masters. I'm talking to you. That's what makes it work so well, in my opinion, is like right from the beginning, she just bypasses the people she's supposed to be confronting. And is like, you're not important.
Yeah.
Who is important are the people I'm going to free and show you that I've been freeing people. And then, yeah, that point just hammers it home. It's amazing.
Yeah, loved it. Definitely loved it. What else? We saw a bit of the Hound and what's her name? Arya, right?
Yeah, at the farm where he just decides, well, this guy's going to die. So, I have to say his logic is fairly sound. The guy probably isn't going to make it through the winter, and he's not going to need the silver. But it's certainly not ethical.
Well, and this also is a reminder of who these characters are. It's like, despite as cute as their witty repartee between the two of them was last episode, at the end of the day, this is a guy who ran over the butcher's son because the king told him to and doesn't think twice about it. Now he's very practically sitting thinking like, well, I guess I'm going to go become a sellsword across the narrow sea. So I guess that's happening.
And the other parts of this episode weren't bad, but they're just things that have to happen. Like you have to have Sam try to take Jilly out to the horror town because that's going to set up future events. And you got to have Stannis be kind of a jerk to Davos and motivate him to get an army because, well, not much is going to happen with Stannis if he doesn't go get an army. So he's got to go get an army. And that's I
love the interaction between Davos and Stannis's kid with the grayscale. Like I love their whole discussions. Their by
yeah.
Her teaching him
he's
how
like,
to read.
I need you to write this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also like her saying like nobody's ever gonna believe you if you're moving your lips while you're reading.
Yeah.
So
no,
on. Like
great.
the very practical. I don't know. It's weird to find those moments of genuine tenderness mixed in with so much horrific crap in this show. Speaking of tender, how adorable was that scene with Podrick and Tyrion, where it's like this deep affection, and Tyrion's like, you need to leave town or it's going to go bad. And that moment when he says, there has never existed a more loyal servant or whatever. It was real. I loved it.
No, and that is something where I don't mind mentioning the book, because I love Podrick and his relationship with Tyrion in the book, and it is carrying through on the TV screen exactly as I would want it to, which is a testament to both those actors. Also, on the not so tender side, you get Oberyn's interaction with Tywin Lannister, and the kind of surprise selection of Oberyn to be sitting as judge on Tyrion's trial.
Yeah, is this did that happen in the book?
I think so.
Okay, I believe it. Yeah, and again, I
want to say yes.
If when that happened in the book, it's overshadowed by events to come. But I especially loved this episode. I hope I'm not getting confused. But the discussion as you could see Tywin beginning to groom Tomlin, and in doing so, sort of divert power away from Cersei, which you could tell really bothers her. She wants to remain the queen
she's
regent.
Irrelevant, yeah.
At
this point. Oh, and don't forget Peter Baelish, both saving Sansa but being an asshole about it.
Oh my God, yeah, that's straight out of the character of the books, man. Like I am really looking forward to the perverse tutelage. As Peter genuinely cares, and keep in mind, Peter always had the hots for Ned Stark's wife, right? But now she's dead. She's dead. So this is the closest thing out there, right? Exactly. I don't know. It's amazing, and yeah, they continue to kill it, man. There's nothing in that show that's not great.
Especially if you're a jester.
Oh my God, bad time to be a jester.
Give him his pay. Crossbow. Run. Swim. No, you're dead.
Yeah.
And that is definitely one of those things where, remember you were upset with his character last week? I wondered if that changed your perception of those scenes, seeing them sort of fulfilled this week.
What do you mean when you said upset with which character?
Because you were like, oh, he's just a drunk and he's unmotivated, and why did he come in and show the Jew? Like, I just don't get it. And now that you know, like, well, he was just being paid to do it. Does that make those scenes feel better?
Yeah. It at least gives a payoff for them, because it certainly set up a question in my mind, like what's his angle? I'll tell you what was great was that moment when he said, oh, wait, don't forget your pay. It was $10,000, right? And the first thing I thought was like, wow, that's a lot of money. That's a whole lot of money. And then it's like, I almost don't believe oh, no, he's definitely not.
Oh, he's not getting it. Yeah. Well, he's getting it, but it ain't his money.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, cool, man. I am definitely still enjoying it. It certainly wasn't like best episode of the season. Honestly, the season premiere is still my favorite episode so far, but I am not disappointed.
Man, and weirdly, like the season premiere didn't even have that much happening. It just sort of just hit on all four cylinders.
It just felt good.
12 cylinders, 18 cylinders.
All the cylinders that you could possibly have.
So many cylinders
in a pre-industrial civilization.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next week when it's Spoilerin time.
Thanks for watching.